Hello, and welcome to our next episode of the TMG Fireside Chat. It's been a while since our last episode where we interviewed Nolan Mackey, my son, and had a conversation around the start of his journey into the fire protection industry. We've received some great comments on it, so be sure to listen. In today's release, we are actually going back a few months and re-releasing our second episode. If you remember, back in February, I sat down with Paul Rivers at the Fire Suppression Systems Association conference where he had just completed his presentation on differentiating PFAS, and separating good PFAS from bad PFAS. Paul and I then led another discussion back in June as part of an FSSA webinar series. Then that led you to a recent series of YouTube shorts where we break down the topic of differentiating PFAS in quick little 5-minute video snippets, which leads us to today's episode. We're re-releasing the TMG Fireside Chat to highlight where all of this began and remind our audience that PFAS is not created equal. It can and has to be differentiated. And we should educate the media and state legislatures as they try to apply a broad brush to a very unique, diverse topic. I hope you find this episode useful and helpful, and please be sure to like, follow, and subscribe to the Mackey Group across your socials, where you find your podcast, and on this YouTube channel. Thank you, and enjoy the episode.
Good afternoon, everyone. Coming to you from beautiful San Juan, Puerto Rico. No, I don't live here. This is the second time.
Be nice to be there.
You are right.
That's right.
I'm here at the Fire Suppression Systems Association Annual Forum, where the last 3 days we've had a number of conference meetings about, technical aspects of our industry, presentations about leadership and mindfulness, and a number of different product solutions / application meetings. And it's also created an opportunity for us to sit down with a good friend of mine, somebody I've gotten to know really well in the last couple of years, and that's Paul Rivers. So, Paul, thank you for sitting down.
It's nice to be here, especially in your new place that you're going to live in.
I'm honored and
Absolutely. I left here. Minneapolis was 8 below, and my wife took me to the airport, and we just had 17 inches of snow. So this is okay down here. I'm all right with that.
And I think you did say that you made sure that the snowblower was doing properly.
Well, that's the kind of guy I am. I just make sure that my wife had the best snowblower money can buy, a Toro 2-stage, 8-horse snowblower with imported shovels from Canada. That's right. It would have been rude not to, but that's the way it's right. Always the best for my wife. So.
That's great. That's great. Just for the broader audience, kind of, obviously you're very, very influential person in our protection space throughout your career. Well rooted in clean suppression and technologies in that space. But some of the people out here may not necessarily know you, especially without being at the conference or any presentation or what have you. So let's kind of go through some rapid fire questions just to kind of give them a little bit more information about who you are. So, favorite, let's say, sports themselves. Are you more of a football fan or more of a baseball fan?
Minnesota Twins. I'm a baseball guy. I could sit and watch a 1-0 game like nothing. I'd be totally happy with that. So, Viking fan. I'm a fair weather fan. I really appreciate good football. I played football in high school. I played baseball too, but football is a tough sport, so I appreciate it. Don't tell anybody in Minnesota, but I do appreciate the Green Bay Packers when they're playing well. So
your neighbors know that?
I can neither confirm nor deny.
I used to live in Green Bay Packers territory. It's embarrassing.
Yeah, well, when I was working at 3M, you'd see a booth, and one had Viking paraphernalia all over it. The next booth right over Green Bay Packers paraphernalia all over it. So that's kind of what we're living. So
that's funny. All right, so my wife and I have spent some time in Minnesota early career, and we live in Duluth. And one of the things that we learned about, say, northern Minnesota cuisine was hot dish.
Hot dish?
All right, so if I show up at a river standing party, what's the hot dish that you're bringing?
It would probably be lasagna.
Lasagna?
Yeah, a little bit of Italian in me. So,
Okay.
So yeah, my specialty is lasagna.
All right.
That would be it. So we do have American chop suey. That's my wife's specialty.
American chop suey.
Yeah, it's kind of a red sauce thing.
Okay.
So now that would be
interesting.
Yeah, that would be the hot dish that we would have.
Okay.
But you were up in Duluth, so you probably had pasties up there.
We had pasties up there. I ate more pasties though than Monopoly.
I would imagine you would have. Yeah. I mean, it's all iron rains and copper rains, all that. Yeah, up there in the Uber, That's right. So,
but really love living in Minnesota. A great part of the country.
Yeah.
A little hardy, of course.
A little bit hardy. That's right.
But the 6 months of winter that you have to deal with, really, make for a much better summer, even if it's only 6 months off.
Yeah, that's right. Well, 3 months of road construction. So this one is
very good. So let's kind of dive right into things. So today you gave a presentation about PFAS. I'm not going to get into the chemical name for PFAS.
Well, that's good because I'm not a chemist. I can fool a lot of people, but I'm not a chemist. So.
But for the listeners, just from an overarching perspective, there's a lot of information, good information, bad information, media, working through the environmental circle, especially all this ESG compliance that's going on. And so PFAS, I think it's a lot of applications, a lot of ways of using those chemicals to get bad rap. And talk a little bit about why it's back in fire protection, but just for every listener, if you can just try to summarize, what is PFAS? In the presentation, you made a reference to how many other products fall under this PFAS umbrella.
Well, PFAS, and actually you should say PFAS because people confuse PFAS with PFOS or PFAS, which is the offending one. We'll talk about that in a second. But there's, depending on who you talk to, between 7,500 and 15,000 products or molecules that would be considered PFAS, or polyfluoroalkyl substances. And the ones that are the offending ones are the ones that are persistent and pervasive in the environment, and they may have some toxicity to it as well. And the ones that have been at the most, from a fire protection standpoint, is PFOS and PFOA. They're in foams, firefighting foams, traditional foams that have been specified for the last 4 or 5 decades, six decades maybe, since the 60s. And when 3M and Navy paired up to develop. And so those have been found to be in groundwater and partitioned to the groundwater. And that's a major issue, and that should be really looked at, and it is being looked at. But unfortunately, a lot of other materials that are considered PFAS are being wrapped in around with that. And that's a problem because there's a lot of misconception to that. There's PFAS can be solids, they can be liquids, they can be gases. In our business of fire protection, people use Teflon tape for pipe threads. That's a PFAS, right? But it's not going to be partitioning to the water phase and polluting it, right? And similarly with other materials, like in our business with special hazard suppression, clean extinguishing agents, those are considered PFAS as well. But however, they don't act the same way as the offending PFOS and PFOA that you have in foam. They don't partition the water; they partition the atmosphere. That chemistry is well understood. It's environmentally benign from the standpoint of how it breaks down in the atmosphere, particularly with the product that I was involved with developing Novec 1230 fluid. It's a fluorinated ketone, and that one is atmospheric lifetime of about a week, and a global warming potential of less than 1, and those ozone depletion potential is unprecedented for a product to have that. And but that got wrapped up into all this. So if it's called a PFAS, then it's automatically assumed it's just like a foam, and that's the challenge that we have in our industry to differentiate that.
Right, break it down, I think, to more of a common understanding language that everyone else can understand. To your point, you're not a chemist.
No,
I'm nowhere near a chemist. I'm just glad I can you to help understand the broader aspect. In this case, the November 30 or 4 function. When you look at one person's in the room made a reference to kind of make an analogy around a correlation between good cholesterol and bad cholesterol.
Right.
And PFAS and bad PFAS.
Right.
And yes, there are examples out there of PFOA and PFAS,
right.
that we know are cause problems. You kind of summarize a little bit about this analogy around cholesterol and PFAS to understand, what are you really talking about?
The materials that partition to the water, they would be considered the bad cholesterol. The materials that partition to the atmosphere would be considered the good cholesterol. That's as simple as it can be that way. You actually look at some of the other things, some of the other good cholesterols would be, there's a lot of our pharmaceuticals are considered PFAS. If you had COVID, if you took Paxlovid, that's a PFAS. But if you listen to the people that are concerned about PFAS partitioning the water, and somehow polluting it, you'd get rid of that medication. There's other ones like Flonase and other things like that. It's all through the pharmaceutical industry as well. So it's really something that has to be more adequately defined.
It's something that we can't just arbitrarily just throw out. They all fall into this category of PFAS.
And unfortunately, people are doing that.
So, and not taking time to truly understand what again, good impact.
Yeah, that's our job to try to communicate that.
Right.
So a lot of things are changing. There's a lot of moving parts right now in the industry that way.
Interesting time for sure.
It is
for our industry.
It is.
When you look at a path forward, you talked in one of your summary slides that I read in the end was, all right, I'm a fire protection contractor, obviously association, a lot of installer members, also has a lot of manufacturing members.
Right.
And you had a call to action for those in the room. Trying to remember what you had.
Well, we have, there's actually, with regard to FSSA, we have some communications already gone out. It's on their website there, but there's also a task group that's being formed to deal specifically with PFAS, per and polyfluoroalkyl substances, and defining those in a good cholesterol, bad cholesterol kind of way, and so that's happening. But it's not just these committees that have to do that. The membership of that actually have to take that information, put it in their presentations, and sell it to the specifying engineers, the authorities having jurisdiction, their customers who are misconstruing or conflating PFAS, the good PFAS with the bad PFAS, the good cholesterol with the bad cholesterol. So that's really what needs to be done. But the most important thing, I think, at the end of the day, what's going on is that people need to settle down, calm down.
That first you start sliding
calm down. There's just it's business as usual, really, right now, and let's not worry too much about it. There's a lot of things going to happen over the next several years, and like we talked about before, halon was banned from manufacture back in 1993. It's still being used today. So
it's created a long supply chain, right? I think this is the same as FM 200. 10 years ago, European Union banned it.
Right.
We're in the U.S. Now it's finally an allocation. Right.
Right. It's so there's another decade or two that's going to go on.
Exactly. Hopefully, it creates. Again, it's changed our industry as a whole, but hopefully the necessity to change because of that certain aspect, especially when you're talking about phones. It creates opportunities to create better products, right? Now there's motivation for home manufacturers here. We now have to find the next generation.
Right, and they are doing that. There is, the fluorine-free foams. They're having some struggles with that because it's not an easy thing to do. It wasn't an easy thing to come up with the original foams that would do what they wanted it to do, and to try to match that performance is quite a challenge. And that's going to be the same thing too. One of the things that they're talking about with the ECHA, the European Union, some proposals there was to come up with alternatives to the current PFAS, PFAS clean agents, and foam is definitely on its way out and being replaced with fluorine-free foam. But the clean agents, they're supposedly they're going to give another 13, 15 years to find an alternative to PFAS. Is that going to be another PFAS? Is that going to be it's going to be a non-PFAS? And if it's non-PFAS, how the heck is it going to work and match what's out there today, right? And that's going to be a challenge. And they haven't found a replacement for Novec 1230 fluid in the last couple of decades. And Moores and 3M and Honeywell and the Chinese. A lot of researchers who are looking for alternatives are trying to find something that would match that product, and it hasn't happened to date. Why do they think it's going to happen in the next 13, 15 years?
So, knowing your development cycle knowing how development cycles work for corporations, large manufacturers, and when we develop products, it wasn't overnight. It's usually 3 to 6 years. What was the development cycle for Novec 1230 before it finally got launched?
Well, when I first started at 3M, that was in 1990, I was actually on the facilities engineering side of things, developing or designing systems for facilities for 3M. And that was a candy store for a fire protection engineer. It's great. But I had the opportunity to move into product development, and the first ones were PFCs, perfluorocarbons, which would be PFAS today. But they were great products, non-ozone depleting, made in the United States, safe, easy to make for 3M. Had a global warming potential of 8,000 and atmospheric lifetime of 3,000 years. Not a product for today. So I went through about 3 of those before we got our nose bloody into the marketplace. And that was 1992 till about 1999 when 3M had a new materials team. And I always knew they were always looking for new molecules to either to make a product that 3M makes internally or to come up with a new molecule. And they discovered ketone, the C6-fluoroketone. And so this really looks like one of those things that Rivers is working on in the lab for fire. I don't know what the tox of it is, but it looks like it environmentally is bulletproof. Send it down to the lab to see if it would put fires out. Sure enough, it did. So that was in 1999. We filed the patent. It was granted in 2000. And, the other shoe never dropped. Turns out the toxicity was surprisingly, it was benign and low in toxicity, as we say. And so it was commercialized, and now it's been copied. So a lot of manufacturers are out there now making products. So
sure, but I think the point there was that, like you said, you've got environmental agencies, they have to worry again the industries, 10 to 15 years.
Gotcha. Yeah, so it took 10 years.
Yeah.
To find it. We weren't even looking for a product. We were actually the new materials team was looking for something else, to make an intermediate to make some other product. And so it was serendipity to find it. It was not obvious. It is really, when I announced the molecule in 2002 at the Hot Wall Conference down in Albuquerque, New Mexico, they all thought it was some other molecule that 3M made, and it wasn't. And what was interesting is that Dick Gann from NIST was the keynote speaker there, and he was speaking on his 5-year program for the U.S. government to come up with a son of Halon. And this they called it son of Halon. They wanted to find something, and they had a 5-year, $49 million program to do that. What we could do at $49 million, and they're looking at phosphidines and furancenes and tropodegradables, this and that, all these. They didn't mention ketone, and we had just filed a patent and got the patent, and I was just announcing it the next day. And I couldn't believe this was happening. Right? And so that ended up being, that 2002, so 10 years ago.
Right. Yeah. That's, obviously it highlights that, one, it's a heavy lift to get there.
It really is.
And it's test, try this, try that.
And considering this hypersensitivity environmentally these days, I'm not even sure that Nova 1230 would come to market today. And so that tells me, how are they going to do that in the next 13 and a half, 15 years?
Rules change.
That's it. Rules have most decidedly changed.
Wow. Well, I think, like you said in the slide, you really laid out, what's the Fire Extinguisher System Association going to do, right? One is creating this task force.
Yep.
Number one. Number two, really put together a game plan to really start to identify, what's going on at the state level, what's going on at the federal level, what's going on at the international level, start really tracking that and get that information, share that information quickly with members, right? And then I think the other thing too, you had a call to action for both manufacturers and installers to say, information coming to you from the FSA to tell you how to, one, what's their PFAS, PFAS. Here's the information you share with your AHJ. Here's the information you share with your design engineer, your energy customers. They know the building. Because the age is not being sunset right now. We know we have years.
Nobody's banning
nobody's banning.
That's right.
And there's still a life to it. And most likely, especially in the U.S., you don't want to firmly say it will happen, but if you look at the history of the EPA and Milan and HFCs,
it's still there.
It's such an option.
And it's still on the U.S. EPA website, is approved. Yeah. And that's we learned a new word this week called derogation, which is means that there's a carve out in the proposed legislation or rulemaking over in Europe that carve out for clean agents, including Nova 1230 or FK 5.0,
which was the last point, and that was stay calm.
Stay calm. That's right.
Let's line up the resources, let's get information out to people, and let's start to educate the market.
Communicate
the benefit of four ketones, how it fits in our space, and HFC program.
They are not going away anytime soon.
So, all right, one last question before we wrap up this whole thing. You look back to your high school days and your yearbook, your classmates, what would they have said, Paul Rivers most likely to?
I would either be a firefighter or a priest, one of the two. Ended up being a firefighter, but because my family was all the Minneapolis Fire Department. My grandfather, my father, Sid, by the way, and his son, Sid's son. And I had a couple brothers, cousins, second cousin, all in the fire department. And I couldn't get on the fire department. I wanted to go on there. So I did the next best thing and became a fire protection engineer and ended up fighting fires for research. And that was quite the thing to be able to do.
Oh, absolutely.
Next best thing. So
I would agree. I would agree. Well, thank you. Really appreciate you taking the time.
You're welcome. All the problem. My pleasure.
I hope you found our discussions informative and useful. As we highlighted in our interview, the fire protection industry needs to stay calm and engage with industry resources to clear a path for good PFAS like fluoroketones and HFCs. We also encourage you to actively participate with the FSSA and stay on top of industry-related information that is intended to help you to understand the benefits of good PFAS
and to be sure to share that information with your AHJs, your design engineers, and your customers. If you'd like to contact Paul or myself, please see our podcast notes or our contact details at the end of this video. Thank you.